Hi, this is Kathleen Scott, and welcome to the Kathleen Scott podcast. I'm so glad you joined. I was struck by a statistic that I read recently in the New York Times that President Trump has been sued over 600 times in various courts in the Trump 2 administration. That's an astounding number of lawsuits. So then it led me to ask the question, well, how is he faring? How is the administration faring in the courts? As somebody who watches the court and as an employment lawyer, my practice is directly related to what's happening, even at the highest level, the Supreme Court level. We did a deep dive and found out that the statistics are really interesting. And I do need to give credit to both the Times and the New York Times for their statistics, which we relied on in part in our analysis here today. So here's what we found out. At the district court level, and for those who aren't that familiar, the lowest level of the federal system is the district court, then there's the appellate court, and then there's the Supreme Court. That's it. It's completely separate from the state. So we're just talking right here about federal courts in cases that where people have filed against the Trump administration, or Trump has filed himself, and asking the question, how's he doing? What's the tally? Well, over 50% of the time at the district court, he's lost. So that's, there's a winner and loser in every case. I always tell my clients before they file, it's 50-50. So that's about where he is at that entry level to the federal system at the district court level. Now, at the appellate level, he's doing about the same, a little better, 51%. But what's interesting, if you look at the numbers, how is Trump faring under the judges that he's appointed? The statistic goes up about 92%. That's pretty interesting. Now, what about the highest level? Because of the president and the numerous types of issues that are before the court right now, they often end up at the Supreme Court. And at the Supreme Court, there's currently in 2025, there was 24 open cases. 21 of those have gone in Trump's favor. My math says that's about 87.5%. So that's pretty astounding. So what does that mean? I want to make another point about the Supreme Court. Most of those cases were filed as an emergency or end up on the so-called shadow docket, which means they don't get the benefit of the full briefing schedule, the full oral argument schedule. So some of those rulings may be temporary. So some legal scholars have said maybe that tide is turning a little bit. We'll have to wait and see. We are well into the 2026 docket, and so usually cases start to come out in March, April, May. Sometimes as late as June, so we'll have to keep an eye on that and keep the statistics going. But what's interesting, I would ask the question, it might be that democracy is in the hands of the district court judges right now who may not feel the same level of alignment. They're appointed for life with whoever maybe appointed them. And also there are hopefully enough federal judges who weren't appointed by President Trump or the Trump administration, or even those who were, who recognize that they hold in our hands these major issues as it relates to immigration, our personal rights. And I really wanted to do a shout out to all the judges out there who are having to deal with this, because it's not easy. And as you know, if you rule against the president's administration, you'll find yourself the victim of a tweet or some other godforsaken retaliatory action. So it's impressive. I think we're living through a moment in history right now where the courts have never been more important. And they've also never been as quote unquote stacked as they were before. And Trump appointed a number of judges to consider issues, and as often younger judges. And again, they're appointed for life. I'm pleased to say here where we are in the Southern District of Florida, we have excellent judges. And honestly, the appointment, we always look at that, who appointed them, and try to get an understanding of whether they're quote conservative or quote unquote liberal judges. But pleased to say that the Southern District of Florida has some of the most intelligent, thoughtful, they don't always go my way, judges, but at least I know they're going to read everything and understand it. So that's helpful. So I thought I would share with you some of the statistics and promise to keep an eye on that trend in terms of which way the Supreme Court is going. And for anyone who doesn't think that what happens with judges doesn't matter for you, just ask anybody who's an immigrant who, thanks to the federal district judges, now has an injunction allowing them to continue working and staying in the country, particularly if they're Haitian American. So if anyone thinks that it's not important who's a judge, or doesn't ever watch a confirmation hearing, or doesn't think about that when they're making a vote for president, well, just remember the statistic that 87% of the time, the cases that end up before the Supreme Court go in favor of the party who put them there. So it matters. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the Kathleen Scott podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. I so appreciate you joining us. If you like what you see, please subscribe. And feel free to send any questions or suggestions on show content or guest at any time.